Hello, this is Peter from the Australian Worm Firm here at Anderson Walk in Smithfield with your Thursday tip for this week. Last week we talked about worm tea, the week before we talked about worm casting extract, and the first week we talked about worm juice. And today we're just going to look at the overall reasons why you might use different ones and a few extra little tricks that you can use to make your product even better. So during the week I had a chat with Rob Heinrich from Uncle Rob's Worm Farm where we discussed the kind of bags that you would use for doing extracts and teas. We have here the calico bag. This is a bag that we use for sending out compost worms, and this is one that I used last week for making a worm tea, and we used that worm tea on the garden. It was fine, but if you look closely you can see it's a really fine weave. And as Rob was talking to me, he discussed the fact that an ideal size, ideal gauge for your worm castings to pass through to make worm tea or an extract is a bit closer to this produce bag. If you look here, bag that you might use for grabbing some apples or other veggies from the store. So closer to 400 micrometers, so 0.4 of a millimeter. So you can see this is still quite fine. Another example he has is this one here. So this one's quite a wider weave, you can see right through it. I'll put my hand in it, you can see just how wide that weave is. So that allows those extra microbes, bacteria, fungi to pass through the weave and into the extract or the tea that you're making, and that enables you to get a really good result. And just for those who are the recyclers out there, curtains make very good bags for worm teas or extracts. So this is something that Rob had. You can see the edge of the curtain. It's got that mesh, and there's enough of the curtain you can tie it together, put your castings inside, and make your worm tea or extract using that bag. So, another area we want to talk about is with the worm tea, how do we help to multiply those microbes? So one way is molasses, as we discussed. There's a couple of other ways that might even be even better. One is fish hydrolysate, so if you can get your hands on that, that's a really good product. It's made by fermenting fish and then it's like an extract from that. And another one that's probably a bit easier to get your hands on is lawn clippings, so dried lawn clippings or straw or things like that. So here's an example. We get a lot of lawn clippings material like that, so you could use that to help feed those microbes in your worm tea or extract and help you get that multiplication effect in your worm tea. The next thing we're going to talk about is our comparison between the juice, the extract and the tea. So we had a little bit of a discussion at the beginning about it, but I'm just going to give a summary. So worm juice, which is the product we talked about first, is made as the liquid drains through the worm farm into the bucket below or out of the tap like these ones, and you might have a container below that. We always say leave your tap open on a stacking worm farm at all times so that the juice can drain out, doesn't become anaerobic, and the juice is easy to obtain. Worm juice is good when your worm farm's a mature system, so this one is a good example of that. So mostly castings, not as good when you have a lot of decomposing material. There can be a lot of pathogens that come out in your juice. So worm juice is quite risky. There's always going to be a balance of pathogens and good microbes and bacteria. So it's a good idea to use it well diluted. On the lawn is the best place to use that. Not something I really focus on. I really like to run it as a drier system. Focus less on getting the juice and more on the castings, and then use those castings to make extracts or teas. Then we talk about extracts, a little bit like this product here. A bit harder to define, but it's a little bit like an extract the way it's made, how it's produced from really mature castings. An extract is a really good product in that you're taking the fantastic finished castings, which we know have very good microbial content. We're using that and we are putting it in solution in water so that we can use it on our plants. So extract is really good, fantastic shelf life. There's different ways to stabilize it. This one here from Microtech Organics in the Barossa Valley can last for over a year, and it's still fantastic to use. So that's a really good option. And then the tea that we did last week, as you remember, that we used the calico cloth. The worm tea has a much shorter lifespan, so closer to 4 to 8 hours. If you want it to last longer, you have to keep bubbling it so those microbes stay alive. You can make it without molasses or anything to help multiply those microbes, but that can make it less likely to go really anaerobic and not so good. However, the tea tends to be stronger, especially if you feed it, as we said, with the molasses or the straw or the fish hydrolysate. So that is an advantage if you're prepared to spend the time to make the tea. They have different purposes. Often the extracts have a bit of a wider range of microbes that they foster, whereas the tea can be a narrower range, but they each have their place. So that's the summary of those two. Next week we're going to address a bit more about bokashi composting. We've just had a new delivery of bokashi bins from Jackie Bokashi, and here's some bran that we've just prepared earlier today. So that's a discussion for next week. Any questions on bokashi, please save them up for then, and we'll look forward to discussing those. And we're also going to discuss today a recent acquisition of the Australian worm firm, officially called the Worm Swag. This worm farm comes from Queensland originally. It's a design of Ross and Sue Turner, and they created a hanging worm farm. As you can see, it can hang from a tree or a veranda. It's a really good size. It's about double the composting capacity of your worm castle or your other stacking worm systems. So it has about double the amount of worms as well. So you usually start off with about 2,000. As you can see, there's also the option with the stand. A worm farm like this is a fantastic option for those with a school group. You might have a community group or a business, and it's also a good option for those if you don't want to bend, because it's on the stand. It's a great height. So if you find that it's difficult with the stacking systems like the worm castle, then the worm swag is a fantastic opportunity. Also for a larger family, or if you have a lot of food scraps, it might be a commercial kitchen, you might do a lot of cooking, it's also a really good opportunity. It does have fairly waterproof sides, which means most of the airflow comes through the top, which is fortunately a mesh top, and that holds the moisture in. When you're watering your garden, you can just water the top of the worm swag at the same rate as you water your plants, and you'll get really good results. We have one here at Smithfield, and this has got our African night crawlers in it, and we also have one at home as well that we've used for 2 years probably, about 2 years, and we love it, and Mum loves it as well. And the problem is Mum kept selling worm swags instead of worm castles, so we thought we just had to buy the worm swag, so we get all the sales, so that's the way it works. Alright, thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoyed this week's Thursday tip. Hope you have a fantastic Easter. Hope you and your family really enjoy the break. And we look forward to catching up with you next week for our next Thursday tip discussing bokashi composting. Thank you very much.